now to Burma, Myanmar, to another very dangerous person who would not have been allowed to be with us until very recently, but thankfully now is. Koko Gyi was in 1988 a final year student at the University of Rangoon, and he led peaceful rallies on the university campus, was very actively involved in the 8888 uprising, was appointed vice chairman of the All Burma Federation of Student Unions. In December 91, he was arrested for participating in another student gathering celebrating Daw Aung San Suu Kyi's award of the Nobel Peace Prize, which resulted in him being sentenced to jail for 20 years of hard labor, of which he served 14, being released in March 2005. And then he was arrested and imprisoned again in 2008. This time he was sentenced to 65 years in prison, but was released in January 2012 and is again active in politics in the very different and very new environment in Burma, about which he'll now tell us. Koko Gyi.
First of all, I would like to thank for giving me this wonderful opportunity, to the event organizers and also to all the participants to attend the 16th Forum 2000. It is my great honor to be invited to talk about this notion of the powerful, powerless. In the context of Burma, Myanmar, and its democratic struggle. Since our moral connection to President Havel is so profound, I would like to convey our deepest condolence to late President Havel, his family, and to people of the Czech Republic. Actually, Mr. Havel has been familiar to our people since Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, in her speeches, repeatedly elaborated Mr. Havel's teachings, the idea of the power of the powerless. Also, thanks to a report entitled Threat to the Peace, it called for the United Nations Security Council to act in Burma, jointly authored by Havel and Bishop Desmond Tutu, which I believe he did it on moral ground. The report brought the highest international attention by putting Burma on the United States Security Council agenda, and also provided a powerful new direction in international effort to bring democracy in our country. President Havel's contribution to Myanmar was not merely in policy area, but perhaps more importantly in moral and political inspiration. When I was in the prison, I had heard about Havel's famous essay, The Power of the Powerless, through the newcomers much more younger than me. I had a chance to read in Burmese only when I first was released in March 2005. I had a strong wish to meet in person. And then I was arrested again in 2007 and sentenced to 65 years and 6 months. Unfortunately, only when I was going to be released, President Havel passed away quietly. At that same day, I lonely celebrated the golden anniversary of my birthday in a small cell by myself. It was a sad coincidence. He gave me a flashlight to look back the life of a greengrocer. I was born and raised in hardworking and poor family. My father was typewriter clerk, and my mother opened fermented grocery shop in my hometown market. I had to get up early in the morning to help my father, to help my mother, to prepare her shop before I reviewed my homework and headed to the school. It was before 1988. 1988. 4/8 democracy uprising in our country. We lived in the closed society where the military-backed parties ran the country under the banner of Burmese way to socialism. Under the socialist regime, the literature available was very limited, mostly ruling parties' crappy propaganda. There were no independent social or political organization that I could join. My routine was my family work, my school, and sitting tea shop in my neighborhood. I simply couldn't comprehend why we were poor even though we work very hard. When our factories nearby stopped running, despite the state-owned radio station kept broadcasting highest productivity rate and growth year after year. Why some of my elder friends who once took part in student protests in 1970s disappear from their houses. In short, why poverty, why lying, and why repression? I was not able to figure out clearly. Then there was a crucial event hit us with big blow. The socialist government demonetized the country's high currency notes in 1987 September. All of a sudden, all hard-earned money in our family's hand became totally worthless papers. There was disruption in our hand-to-mouth living. The sense of unjust grew on my mind. We students protested the demonetization. After a series of intermittent unrest, some students got killed in early 1988. I myself managed to make a narrow escape when the military and riot police squeezed from both sides and cracked down on unarmed student protesters in March 16 of 1988. To me, that was a turning point. The cold-blood killing triggered moral outrage, together with sense of injustice and moral outrage. I said to myself, enough is enough. I vowed to fight against it and redress the wrongdoing in our society. From poverty to repression, this is the struggle for dignity. Human is not passive agent without choice. And obedience is not unidirectional process. As President Harvey clearly articulated in his essay, Havel said that, since the main pillar of post-totalitarianism is living a lie, the fundamental threat to it is living the truth. I decided to break the line and self-complacency. We students organized student unions in university campuses. In fact, the union was illegal since the gender dynamited student union building in 1962. We circulated anti-dictatorship pamphlets. We called for nationwide non-violent popular uprising in August 8, 1988. historic 4/8 movement. People took to the streets, calling for restoration of democracy and human rights in our country. We call for decent and dignified life. It was the largest popular revolt in our history. My faith in human being as moral agent who is capable for making choices for himself or herself has become solidified after being part of that historic wave of mass movement. I often hear the cynicism of some scholars, think tank groups, diplomats, and journalists who say that Myanmar dissidents are no longer relevant and they no longer represent people's voice. We have to work with the people in power rather than people in need. I would say that. Such analysis is blatantly wrong. They should better read Havel's writing and carry it along before they make any out-of-touch comments. President Havel once taught us that society is a very mysterious animal with many faces and hidden potentialities. It is extremely short-sighted to believe that the face society happens to be presenting to you at a given moment is its only true face. In this world, none of us knows all the potentialities that slumber in the spirit of the population. Sure, people often fake the fear, and people often play dumb in order to avoid or minimize the risk. Just because of their apparent face you are seeing, you can judge that you know their hidden faces. It is clear that those who underestimate the people and the dissident movement only count tangible and visible power as the only strength in society. They fail to appreciate intangible power and how it becomes a formidable force when people choose to live with truth. Look at the 1990 elections and recent 2012 by-election in Myanmar. How people were brave enough to show their hidden face whenever they have a chance. Whenever I meet elites who tend to underestimate the people's courage and capacity of making moral choice. I remember an Ethiopian proverb that says, when the great Lord passes, the wise peasant bows deeply and silent farts. I spent 18 years in prison in past 24 years. Whenever the feeling of frustration and mood of dejection crept into my mind, I always tried to reconnect with the faith that I have in moral capacity of the human being, in particular of our people of Myanmar. This empowered my inner strength. I not only lived, but also matured in prison with my political conviction. Sense of humor and Buddhist outlook of life. I never regret what I have done politically. I always maintain positive attitude with my sense of humor. And I always try to see larger context. As a Buddhist, I view life as a process of constant impermanence, from womb to tomb. Why I should be so stuck with fear, as fear in itself is a part of impermanence. In Buddhist teaching, there are 5 opportunities that are difficult to obtain or scare. Don't labak, Among the 5 opportunities, birth as a human being is the most important. Human life is Dunghlaba, so precious to obtain. If we value the Dunghlaba, preciousness of human life, we wouldn't violate it, or we would not allow others to violate and abuse human Dunghlaba, human dignity and human rights. We humans would become sensitive to injustice, inequality and repression. We would have a strong will to fight back against any attempt to dehumanize our Dunghlaba. All in all, I would say this notion of Dunghlaba as a foundation for self-respect, dignity, and power of the powerless. Now, our country is in the process of political transition. Therefore, to make the national reconciliation, we need to convince the people in power. And at the same time, we need to encourage people in need to value their Dunghlaba. I strongly believe that this notion of human preciousness, Dunghlaba, will bring forth our energy and positive power for national reconciliation and nation building. Thank you all.